Hello and welcome. For centuries, humanity has searched for the origin of reality in matter, space, and time. But what if we have been looking in the wrong direction? What if the true beginning of reality is consciousness itself? Let's explore this extraordinary possibility together.
So, I actually have a question for you right out of the gate.
Oh, all right. Let's hear it.
When you look for the origin of reality, where do you look?
Wow, okay. That is, that's the ultimate question, isn't it?
It really is, yeah.
And, if you look at human history, our answer has been overwhelmingly, almost exclusively external. We always look outward.
Right, out into the world.
Exactly. We build these giant telescopes to look at the stars, or we build particle accelerators to smash atoms together. We trace the math all the way back to the Big Bang.
We want to find the physical starting line.
Right. We have this deeply ingrained assumption that the visible physical universe is the foundational bedrock of everything.
Which, it feels completely intuitive. We want to point at a physical thing, measure its mass, and just say, there, that's the baseline. That's where it all started.
Yeah, of course. It's how we're wired.
But today's deep dive into our sources is basically going to completely flip that script.
Mm-hmm.
Because what if we've been asking the wrong question for centuries?
Mm-hmm. It's a massive paradigm shift, truly.
Right. What if creation doesn't begin with matter at all, but with consciousness?
And the material we're exploring today completely rejects the idea of consciousness as just some passive observer.
Yeah, that's a huge point.
We're so conditioned to think of consciousness as this accidental byproduct of a highly complex brain, like the heat coming off a car engine,
It's kind of sitting quietly in the dark theater of your mind, eating popcorn and watching the physical world go by.
Exactly, just along for the ride. But that is not what we're talking about today.
No, not at all. The mission of this deep dive isn't to look at consciousness as a spectator. We are going to explore the truly radical framework that consciousness is the hidden foundation upon which the entire world unfolds.
It is the invisible engine of reality itself.
Exactly. So, to you listening right now, if consciousness is the true beginning, what does it actually do?
That's the million-dollar question.
It is. Well, buckle up because it might just create everything you think of as real.
Yeah, it's wild.
Let's start with something incredibly basic. Here is a hook for you. When you open your eyes right now, do your eyes actually see the world?
The knee-jerk reaction is to say, of course they do. That's what eyes are for.
Right, obviously.
But let's look at the actual biological mechanics of perception here. The eyes themselves never truly see anything.
Wait, really? Explain that.
Well, their entire physical function is just to receive photons of light and trigger a chemical reaction. They're just collecting raw, totally meaningless data.
So they aren't even like camera lenses capturing a photograph then? They're more like a radio antenna picking up static.
Yeah.
And consciousness is the decoder ring translating that static into a beautiful symphony.
That's a much better way to think about it. But even then, let's take it a step further.
Okay.
It's not just that consciousness is translating the world. It's actually reconstructing it from scratch.
Reconstructing it. Okay.
Yeah. The colors, the shapes, the depth, the movement of the room you're sitting in right now, all of that is generated entirely within consciousness.
So the outside world doesn't actually look like that.
Right. Without consciousness, you could have a perfectly functioning eye, a flawless optic nerve, and a healthy visual cortex, and there would still be zero visual experience.
Oh, wow.
Just biological hardware firing in the dark.
Okay, I love this decoder ring concept, but I know some of our listeners with backgrounds in physics are probably screaming at their steering wheels right now.
Oh, I'm sure they are.
Arguing about objective reality. So I have to push back hard here.
Go for it.
I get that my perception of a stone, like the gray color, the rough feeling on my skin, is rendered in my mind. But a stone is still a physical stone, right?
Yes.
If I throw that stone at my window, it shatters. Physics doesn't care about my decoder ring.
That's a totally fair objection. And honestly, it's where people usually get tripped up with this stuff.
Right, because the window still breaks.
Exactly. But the framework we're discussing doesn't deny that a physical substrate exists. It doesn't claim the universe is just empty magic.
Okay, good. So what does it say?
What it clarifies is the difference between physical data and meaning. Yes, the stone hits the window, the atomic structure of the stone overcomes the atomic bonds of the glass.
Right.
But in a purely physical universe, that's all it is. It's just atoms vibrating and displacing other atoms.
Just blind cause and effect, basically.
Exactly. The concept of a stone, the idea of a window, the frustration of damage, the concept of cost to replace it.
Oh, I see where you're going.
Even the idea of inside versus outside, none of that exists in the physics of the collision.
It's just particles moving.
Right. Where do concepts like justice, beauty, freedom, success, or purpose actually come from?
You definitely can't put justice under a microscope.
No, you can't. You can't extract a vial of freedom from a rock. Meaning, isn't hiding inside physical matter waiting for a scientist to discover it.
So all of that is added by us.
Yes, every single value that shapes human civilization is an active creation of consciousness.
So without consciousness, the universe would just be this silent, completely meaningless collision of atoms. Consciousness is what paints the picture and assigns the value.
It brings it all to life.
But that still leaves us with the physical universe itself, right?
Yeah.
Space, matter, the hard stuff outside of us.
Right.
Which actually leads me to this deeply unsettling question for you, the listener. How do you know you aren't dreaming right now?
Yes, that is the ultimate test of this theory.
It really makes you think.
And what's fascinating is how modern neuroscience completely aligns with this deeply philosophical question. Think about your physical brain for a second.
Okay.
It is locked inside the dark, silent vault of your skull. It never touches a tree.
Never sees a sunset.
Right. It never feels a raindrop. It only ever receives electrical impulses.
Right, so it's basically sitting in a sensory deprivation tank its entire existence.
Precisely. It is consciousness that takes those abstract electrical signals in the pitch black and translates them into the solid, bright, tactile 3D world we perceive.
That is wild to think about.
And the ultimate proof that consciousness can do this all on its own is the dream state.
The dream argument. I love this part of the deep dive.
It's so compelling, right?
It is. Like, think about your last vivid dream. You are fast asleep in a dark room. Your eyes are completely closed.
Yeah.
Yet you experience towering mountains, vast oceans, crowded cities. You can pick up a stone in a dream, and it has weight.
It has texture.
Exactly. You can feel the wind on your face. In that moment, it feels completely, undeniably real to your nervous system.
Very real.
Yet absolutely none of it depends on external matter.
Exactly. If consciousness can generate a fully immersive, completely convincing physical reality during sleep out of absolutely nothing but its own activity,
Right.
it forces us to ask a staggering question. Is the reality we experience while awake doing the exact same thing?
Just operating by a more consistent set of rules.
Yeah. Reality isn't something you bump into. It is something consciousness continually reveals.
Wait, here's where it gets really interesting for me. If the external world is a rendering, what about my physical body?
Oh, that's a great question.
Because we always assume the body is the primary thing, right? Biology comes first, and then consciousness kind of flickers on inside the brain later.
That's the standard model, yeah.
But if everything is generated, is my body generated too?
Well, think back to the dream again. When you dream, your actual biological body is lying paralyzed in bed.
Right.
Yet within the dream, you have a dream body. You look down, you see hands.
Yeah, that body walks, it runs, it gets tired.
It feels pain.
And that dream body isn't made of carbon or water. It's made entirely of consciousness.
Right. So the framework suggests that the physical body we experience right now in the waking world is not just a biological container that houses us.
Okay, then what is it?
It is the form through which consciousness currently expresses itself. The body is an experience.
Wow.
And notice what else consciousness creates in that dream state. Space.
Oh, wow. You're right. In a dream, I could look up and see infinite stars, or I can run across a huge, sprawling football field.
Exactly.
But there is no literal physical space inside my skull for a football field to fit into.
Right. Because space isn't a literal empty box that the universe placed us inside. Space is a psychological construct.
A construct.
Yeah. It is the user interface that consciousness uses to organize experience. It's how we process separation and movement.
Okay, if space is basically just the software's way of rendering distance, that completely changes how we have to look at the other big invisible force.
You mean time?
Yes, time. Which brings up another huge question for you to chew on. Why does an hour spent laughing with a friend feel like a single minute, but an hour sitting in a dentist's chair feels like an absolute lifetime?
I mean, we've all been there, and that subjective stretch and compression is the key to understanding what time actually is.
We usually think of time as this relentless conveyor belt, just moving the universe forward.
Yeah, but the material draws on the philosopher Immanuel Kant to explain why that's wrong.
Okay, what did Kant say?
Well, if time were an independent physical property of the external universe, like mass or gravity, it would act on us consistently.
So an hour would always feel like exactly an hour to our perception.
Right. Gravity doesn't care if you're having fun.
It really doesn't.
It pulls you down with the exact same force regardless. But time warps entirely based on your internal state.
Exactly. So Kant argued that time is not a property of the external world at all.
Nope. Time is simply the frame rate of our consciousness.
The frame rate, I like that.
It is the fundamental mechanism through which the mind organizes sequences of events. A clock doesn't measure time as a physical substance.
Because it's just measuring mechanical movement, right?
Yeah.
A gear turning, a crystal oscillating.
Exactly. It is consciousness that links the past moment to the present moment to create the experience of time flowing.
So without consciousness constantly knitting those moments together, there is no past or future.
Just a static, frozen existence.
Which completely blows up how we view ourselves.
Yeah.
Let's talk about identity, because this is where it gets incredibly personal.
It really does.
Think about your own sense of self right now. Like, who are you?
It's the classic paradox of the ship of Theseus, but applied to human biology.
Oh, right. If you replace every plank of wood on a ship over 10 years, is it still the same ship?
Exactly.
Let's make that visceral for a second. Think about a scar you have. Maybe one you got when you were 10 years old falling off a bike.
Okay, yeah.
The actual physical skin cells that were cut and healed back then, they have died and fallen off decades ago.
Long gone.
Right. The scar you are looking at right now is made of completely new atoms that are just mimicking the shape of the old injury.
That's a little creepy when you think about it.
It is. The biology is completely different.
Yeah.
The memories you have of the fall are fading and altering. Your thoughts change minute to minute.
Right.
So who is the I that looks at that new skin and says, I got this scar when I was 10?
That's a brilliant way to frame it. Because if you are just your physical body, the you from 10 years ago literally does not exist anymore. This enduring sense of self cannot be explained by biology alone. The self is not a material object.
So what is it?
The self is the singular, unchanging center point from which consciousness continuously generates the awareness of I.
The eye of the hurricane might be a cliche, but it really works here.
It's a perfect analogy.
The cells, the thoughts, the memories, they're all swirling and dying and being reborn around you. But that center point of awareness remains constant.
And that conscious center point isn't just crucial for your own identity, it's the only thing that makes human connection possible.
That's a massive point in our sources. If you strip away consciousness, connection just evaporates.
Completely.
Think about language. Words aren't physical objects.
Uh-huh.
When you say the word truth or friend, you aren't transmitting physical matter.
No, you're transmitting a recognized form of experience. A parent, a child, a stranger. These aren't definitions you can find by analyzing someone's atomic structure.
Right, you don't put someone's DNA in a centrifuge to determine if they are your friend.
Yeah, exactly. Meaningful relationships are formed purely through mutual conscious recognition.
So consciousness is the invisible bridge that connects us.
It is. It transforms what would otherwise be 8 billion isolated, silent biological machines into a shared, vibrant world.
Okay, so we have covered some astonishing ground here. We've explored how consciousness renders perception.
How it assigns all meaning.
Yeah, how it generates the user interface of space and time.
How it anchors our identity through changing selves.
And how it forms the bonds between us.
It's a lot.
It is. But this all demands the biggest question of the entire deep dive.
Let's hear it.
If consciousness is doing all of this impossibly heavy lifting, why?
The ultimate question.
Yeah. What is the ultimate point of all this effort? Here's a question for you. If the universe is really just a bunch of physical matter, how can matter make a choice?
Well, it can't.
Right.
That is the fundamental limitation of a purely physical universe. Matter operates strictly on the laws of physics.
It operates on cause and effect. Determinism.
Exactly. A rock cannot choose to be hopeful. A cloud cannot choose despair. Atoms cannot forgive each other, and molecules cannot feel fear.
Matter just does what the physics equation tells it to do.
Right.
It has absolutely no agency.
Right. But consciousness possesses something entirely unique.
Which is?
Freedom. The freedom to determine the meaning and direction of an experience.
Oh, wow.
Every single moment of your life presents countless possibilities, but only one of them collapses into your lived reality, and that happens because of the choices you make.
So choice isn't just a byproduct.
No, choice isn't just something we do. It is the highest expression of consciousness interacting with reality.
And through that choice, we get something matter can never achieve: growth.
Yes.
If the universe is just a machine, it doesn't learn. But consciousness expands.
It's constantly evolving.
The sources in our deep dive really emphasize that life isn't just a brutal, mechanical process of trying to survive until your biology gives out.
No, every experience is data for growth.
Right. Joy teaches us gratitude. Suffering, as awful as it is physically, it deepens our empathy and understanding. Failure forces wisdom.
It completely reframes the human experience. We aren't just enduring life. Consciousness is utilizing the friction of life to evolve toward a deeper understanding of itself.
Which brings us to the ultimate friction, the boundary we are all terrified of:
Mortality.
life and death. We are so conditioned to view them as absolute, terrifying opposites, a hard beginning and a permanent end.
But look at them through the lens we've been using today, right? The cycle of waking and dreaming.
Okay, yeah.
Every single night you fall into deep sleep, your waking world, your house, your job, your friends, completely disappears from your awareness.
It effectively dies to you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then a new world emerges in your dreams, and when
Right.
you wake up, that dream reality dissolves and the waking reality begins again.
So the implication here is that life and death might not be a final start and stop.
Right. They might just be the macro version of falling asleep and waking up. They are different expressions of the continuous, unbroken activity of consciousness, just transitioning from one state of experience to another.
Which logically forces us to ask, where is this all heading?
Yeah, what's the end game?
If consciousness is continuously growing, making choices, living, and transitioning through death just to experience more, what is the destination?
What is the grand purpose of the universe waking up?
Exactly.
Well, our sources pull in some profound historical philosophy to answer this.
Oh, interesting.
Throughout history, different cultures have noticed that consciousness seems driven toward a higher unity.
Like what?
Well, in Eastern traditions, this is often conceptualized as the movement from yin toward yang, a natural drive toward ultimate harmony.
Okay.
Western philosophy often frames it morally or intellectually as the journey from ignorance toward ultimate truth.
And the material specifically highlights the German philosopher Hegel here, right?
Yeah.
He didn't just casually name drop a concept. He called this final destination absolute knowing.
Absolute knowing, yes. Hegel's idea is incredibly relevant here.
How so?
He argued that the purpose of all this, all the history, the suffering, the joy, the human striving, isn't just random wandering. The universe is essentially a giant mind trying to understand itself.
So it fractures itself into all these individual experiences to learn.
Exactly. The destination, absolute knowing, is the moment consciousness finally achieves a complete, total, unified understanding of its own reality.
I absolutely love that. It's like the universe is waking up from amnesia, using our lives to remember who and what it actually is.
That is a beautiful distillation of it, honestly.
Well, as we near the end of this deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with a thought experiment.
Oh, a thought experiment. Okay.
A way to truly cement the weight of what we've unpacked today. I want you to imagine the universe right now, but entirely devoid of consciousness.
Just wipe it completely clean.
Exactly. Remove every single observing mind. What is actually left?
It is a stark, almost unimaginable void. If consciousness did not exist, there would be no colors. Because there is no mind to render the light. There would be no sound, just silent vibrations in the air.
No flowing time.
No past or future, no organized space, no meaning, no language, no relationships, no choices, no joy, no suffering, no growth.
Just nothing. There would only be an unknown possibility locked in absolute pitch black silence, completely beyond experience.
It's eerie.
It is everything humanity has ever known,
Yeah.
everything you have ever loved, feared, or built depends entirely upon consciousness existing first.
Without the observer, the universe might as well not exist. It has no stage to play on.
It is incredibly profound to think that for centuries we have searched for the origin of reality out there in the dark.
We keep building bigger machines, digging deeper into matter, energy, and quantum fields.
Absolutely convinced that if you just look hard enough at the physical stuff, we will find the bottom of existence.
Yet every single scientific discovery we make eventually loops us right back to the exact same inescapable question. Who is the I making this discovery? Reality only becomes a reality because consciousness reveals it.
So consciousness isn't some strange ghost haunting the biological machine of the universe.
No, it is the very condition that allows a universe to appear at all.
And deep down, throughout thousands of years of human history, we have sensed this. We've felt it.
We really have.
We have given this invisible originating source so many different names across countless cultures. We've called it mind. We've called it spirit, the soul, the absolute God.
Different eras and different traditions using whatever vocabulary they had available, all pointing their fingers toward the exact same profound mystery.
Because the deepest, most fundamental reality we are all desperately seeking isn't hiding somewhere out there in a distant galaxy.
It's not. It is already present right now within the very consciousness through which you're experiencing this exact moment.
The greatest frontier of exploration isn't building a spaceship to go outward. It's turning inward, awakening to the infinite depth of the consciousness that has always been looking right through your own eyes.
It completely inverts the nature of existence. We aren't in the universe. The universe is in us.
It really is the ultimate paradigm shift. So what does this all mean for you as you take off your headphones and go about the rest of your day?
That's the real takeaway.
I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over on your own. Something that builds on everything we've explored today about meaning, identity, and the universe trying to know itself.
Let's hear it.
If consciousness is the fundamental fabric of reality, if it isn't just an accident, but an active force continually learning, growing, and transforming itself through our individual choices, our joys, and our sufferings, then consider this.
Okay.
What if all the billions of people on Earth aren't actually entirely separate beings? What if you, me, and every single stranger you pass on the street today are simply the exact same underlying consciousness, exploring itself from 8 billion wildly different points of view?
Thank you for joining me on this journey. If this perspective changed the way you see reality, consider subscribing and joining us for the next chapter. Together, we'll continue exploring the meeting point of philosophy, science, and consciousness. Until next time, keep questioning and keep discovering.